Okay, so gonna look at the code. We'll just take a quick walk through of Samuel's code because it's well written. Few things left to do though. Let's just take a quick look at that again as we reviewed that at the start of class. Here's the page. Now remember, in your homework, be sure to submit the upload the compressed source code for your assignment. So you come down here, and I updated the instructions to it just to remind you. Upload to me a zip archive of your code. Don't give me a Word document. You can give me a Word document if it helps, but I want to have a zip archive of your code so I can extract it on my own server and duplicate your wonderful website and get thousands of dollars for the work you did. And also provide a link to your published page. It's good if you actually have your page just be a folder location, but if it does need if you have a specific HTML file like here, when I go up, I had to browse to homework3.html. You can make that index.html for every one of your sites. Then all you have to do is tell it, here's the path to my page, and index.html will open by default. I'm not going to mark you off, but that's a good thing to do. Homework3.html, and again, just to review here, what I'm looking for in the code is a good HTML header with your explanation of your homework. You could even copy paste the description from the assignment in there if you like. You don't have to. That's a long description. I gave you some ideas for perhaps challenging things to do with processing your array of people objects. And what happened to the JavaScript here? Let's see, sources. Why can't I see the JavaScript anymore? Oh, because I haven't opened up the HTML yet. Now the JavaScript will show up. And this needs a little comment header at the top so I know whose fantastic code this is. And it looks like a decent amount of comments here, kind of explaining what they do. But just for a quick look here, let's just walk through this code just so we understand how your fellow programmer did it. And I'd say it's working code. Here let's walk through it real quick. And if you want to pipe in Samuel, it's fairly easy to read. Has little comments there, but let's skip the function process name here, and let's look at what we're doing with people. We have an array of strings called names. Now you get to decide what to name your variables. I might have named this A names to remind me it's an array of names. You get to choose how you name your variables. Jobs, it's an array of strings. And remember, with JavaScript, you don't have to have the same type in an array. Other languages, you can only have the same type in your array. Here's an array of ages, and we see that they are going to be treated as numbers. And here we have peoples. This, I can tell, is a global variable. How do I know it's a global variable? Because it's defined outside of any function in the JavaScript. And this means I'm initializing it as an empty array. The square brackets tell you I have an array. Peoples is an array, but it's empty. Square brackets creates an array. Now let's look at this code. This is where he creates an array of people, where I do a dot push. I can do that with any array. If I want to add something to an array, I can have my array name dot push, and the parameter is the new thing I'm putting into my array. And I can see that this is creating a person object, giving it the three parameters: the name at index I, which is going from 0 to less than the lengths of my names array. The jobs better be longer or the same length as the names array, and same with ages, because notice names array is determining how far I go, how many times I go through this loop. If ever I goes past the end of jobs or ages, this code will crash. It's saying trying to access invalid array. Read beyond end of array. I forget what the error message would say. And he's logging a nice message using the getAge method of the people at position I in the people's array. Let's go now take a look at the definition of his person class. New person means there better be a constructor called person. Let's go up to the array at the top. I'm thinking he defines it here. So here's his definition of the person class. Capital P for person. Here's the constructor taking 3 parameters. Un for username, jib for job, AE for age. Again, that's the choice he made for variable names. That's perfectly fine. It's a short piece of code, so don't have to worry about super long names. Longer names that explain it exactly, you're welcome to use that as well. Remember, this means this is the new object I'm constructing will have a property called UN that will have the value handed to the parameter UN. So these two UNs aren't the same. This is the UN property of the person being constructed. UN here is referring to the variable being sent. You are allowed to have a UN name there because it's attached to this. UN here is a variable. Did I see a hand up in front there? Oh, you're good? Okay. All good with understanding that code? I find this is a great way to learn coding. Read someone else and see, hey, that's an interesting way to do it. And do I understand what they're doing? Reading other people's code. That's why code reviews and even just exchanging code, seeing what other people are doing, helps you understand what they're doing and get ideas of how to do things better, or give them ideas of how to do things better. And of course, debugging your code, that's another way to learn. Okay, so that has a constructor. Now it has functions called getAge, and we see that getAge simply returns the string username is this age concatenated with space years old. It returns that string. So whatever we do with getAge, we can assign it to a string, or we can send it out to console.log of the age. Getting the job and income, he's multiplying their age by a special number. So boy, people make a number based on their age. That'd be pretty cool. And then returning how much they make for a living based on that calculated income. Concatenating strings along with numbers. Any questions about that code? Pretty easy to read, good disbursement of comments along the way. And then this is the code that processes the name where someone has entered something in the form. Has entered something in the form, and now process name, entered name is, well, whatever was typed into that element named username. Remember, that's whose ID is username. The value of the element, the dot value, we find out is the best way to get at what they've typed in that particular element. And I'm assuming in the HTML that these are input elements of type text. Let's just go here and check. And we see, yes, they are type text and type number. And that produces this nice, clean web page. But making me scared, they're going to sell my information on the dark web. So the HTML, the key here is the ID of those elements. Now, as we start using CSS, you might want to use a class definition as well to give you control of your style. That's where we'll add the CSS.
I did, but I haven't done CSS in so long. I spent 5 seconds trying to do it. I'm like, okay, I can't remember how to do CSS.
Yeah, a good way to start CSS is just give everything a class as you go. Then in CSS you can say, oh yeah, that element whose class is this gets this style.
I tried that, but it didn't seem to work.
Yeah. Yeah, and CSS is funny. If you change things, you have to make sure to refresh everything as well as including the CSS, or you won't see your change you thought you fixed. That's a very easily confusing thing about CSS. You have to force a reparsing of the CSS, and it's often very confusing because it's like, wait a minute, I just made that change. Why didn't that square go red? Well, you have to. I think it's a control refresh to make sure it reprocesses everything. Okay, so 3 elements with those IDs, and then back at the code, he reads username, job, and age into variables. Using var instead of let, that's not a big problem. Usually we use let, but var is just fine. It does become a global variable if you use var. That's just the thing with var. And I think the coding, the more modern coding, everyone is using let these days. But you don't get marked off for using var if the code works. Yes?
From what I heard, var was the older browser supported one.
Yes, that's correct. Yeah. The real old browsers don't support let. But we throw out those old browsers. Force people to.
If you're using Internet Explorer, you're already doing something wrong. So.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
If you're using Safari from 2016,
you're already doing something.
The times I've run into the old browsers, we have some old network equipment that they have web pages that are built for, that will only work with old browsers.
The world of security.
Yeah, that's right. Old browsers are insecure.
2016 unupdated Safari is not probably not the most secure.
There was a, well, I think some of the network hardware we have here is old enough where it only works if I connect to it using Windows 7 and the old, not old Internet Explorer or the web page just freezes up. And I believe I think it was using Flash.
I mean, the NHS in the UK was using Windows XP for the longest time.
Yeah.
Like all the way up until all this ransomware stuff happened.
Oh.
And so then the NHS got like shut down because they were using Windows XP and like everything got ransomware.
Okay, I'm gonna go up a level now and see what Harley turned in. Harley's not here, so we get to pick on him. He turned something in. He did not give me a source code, but he did give me a Word document with, I think, screenshots of source code. So I'm going to have to get the source code from him. But let's see what he's got here. I see a homework 3. And here's people objects. Oh, does he have style sheets? Let's take a look at sources. Oh, he has JavaScript, and there's homework 3. Oh, look at that. He has a nice header in his HTML. Writing code that works. I like his mission statement.
You can update the description.
Here's the standard HTML. He puts the inline CSS. Loves that salmon color, I guess. Another thing you can do on web pages, you can actually mess with color on the page, and I don't know if you can actually change the JavaScript on the page and hack the page that way. So that is one way of hacking, is actually messing with the JavaScript. Let's take a look at his JavaScript now. Here we have a nice header. He could have done a little better on this. Manipulating people objects, and maybe a short description of the homework. A form, this JavaScript manages the form being processed. Let's take a look at his person constructor. Boy, you guys are boring. You know, I wanted you to give more than just first name, last name, age to your people. Give interesting things. I know Abby did. She has a lot of interesting things. But yeah, it's always good. Start out with simple, and you can always add it once you have these things working. And remember, if I ever change my constructor, did you know I believe, I better try this, you can have a constructor that takes different number of parameters. If you add a process, or add a method or a property, you will need to update your constructor and update the number of parameters to your constructor typically. You can always have a default value if it's not passed to it in the constructor. So the full name has a first and last name. So he hasn't done anything but a full name method in his person. So I think he needs to do more here. Here's our empty people array. And let's see, people list. Oh, here we go. We have a people list taking a people, I'm assuming this is an array of people. He has an empty string, And he did follow the instruction I had sent an email. He used the for person of the person array. This allows you to get at each person of the array. I'm so used to processing arrays of numbers that I'm used to using the in instead of the of. Because we are dealing with objects, we need to use O person of AP. Now you could use the Samuel technique of using the number of things in that person array. Then you don't have to worry about of or in, and it uses the square bracket. But this is a little neater looking code, and someone looking at that will say, "Yeah, you're a more sophisticated programmer. You know the cleaner for loop." So, and of course, you're reading someone else's code. You won't have a deer in the headlights of what in the world are they doing there. But good comments along the way as well. So he's listing the person, or he's returning it. He's building a list and then returning that list of the list of people. And let's see here. He's putting full name, adding the new line character. So if I'm printing it out to the console, it'll look right. Remember, if you want to use this output and have it display in a browser instead of /n, you're going to need the BR element. If you want new lines in your browser. Your browser ignores this when rendering a page. Unless you tell it to use raw output, it will not give you a new line unless you have the BR element. Or you embed these in like a paragraph P element. So that returns the list of people using full name, and full name is simply first name with a space plus last name. He commented out some old code with little comment there, good. Here's the process form. Takes the name, getting those names from those element, FN, LN, age. Gives a little alert window. And here's the creation of that new object. This is what I want to see. Making that object, practicing making an object, and he better do a push. There he does, the push to the people array of that person. Little typo in the comment, not a big deal. So very basic, missing some functions of people, such as average age and things. So he has not completed his assignment here to have functions that do statistics, at least two functions that do statistics on the people array. Listing the names is not a statistic, it's just giving a name. So, readable code though, and let's see that it works. Let's do one last test here. We have Joe, tab, Smith, age 99999, very old. And let's see, there is the processing. When I do alerts, I like to at least indicate something about it. It needs a little spell check on his errors there. I'll bet you there's an extension to VS Code. You could do spell check. Enrolling Joe Smith, and console shows the people array. Let's now see if I add another person, whether I get the other people added. Let's add John Smith. Age, he's a little older. Processing, enrolling John Smith, and now I should see two people. Yep, so I see two people in the list of people. Joe Smith, John Smith. So I can tell his listing of people is working. So working code so far, no errors. Notice I fixed the error. You were getting a complaint about fave icon all the time. I put in a fave icon on my website, so you won't see that little annoying error message every time. Is that understandable what's done so far? So you got a little work to do, Sam, to put in some comments. Otherwise, and also process the array of people. Don't just process the array of names. You know what I'm just talking about? Mm-hmm. And I think you got a handle on that, because I want to make sure you have good practice dealing with objects, because they're slightly different, and we see that in the little hint that I gave last time in the and Harley did it. It's a nice clean looking loop in the processing of your people. Right, where is that? Here it is. I'm processing the array of people. That's AP is an array of the people object. You don't have to do it this way, but if you, I like the nice clean way. You might want to practice that nice clean way of processing an array of objects, because objects are the way to go. And make sure you have a real good understanding of this class constructor. Now I'm going to do some on my own. Let's see what I have on mine. I don't think mine has gone very far yet. Let's take a look at A.T. Manning's homework 3. Here I have nobody listed initially when I come. Well, if I do an enroll and age is empty, what's going to happen? Processing subscription, enrolling, question mark. So pretty boring code. Let's see if he put any comma in there. Let's see, if I add another person, I'll add Joe Smith, age 99, enroll him, get the alert. I think I'll turn off the alert. Those get a little annoying after I've debugged the code. And let's see what I have at the console. There's my list of people. But I want to get statistics every time I enroll a new person. I want to see new statistics. I'm planning on displaying the statistics on my web page and not just to the console and alert. I think that's a better way, and it's more like what I'll be doing out there in the real world. Out there in the real world, nobody watches the output of the console, and alerts get very annoying, and many settings on browsers, you do not allow pop-ups. So pop-ups are really only for debugging. Avoid them. They're just low-class code if you're popping up messages all the time. So the alert is nice for debugging, but turn it off for your final website in the future. You can use them for debugging this time. All right, so my code now, I'm going to go to my VS Code and see if I can clean that up a little bit and do something with something about more interesting information than first name, last name, age. And I'm not even going to worry about the style, but I am going to put classes in there. So when I apply style sheets, I can align everything in this element, in this column, and everything in this column a certain way. My whole table can have a style, but I'm just going to delegate that to my style sheet. To prepare for that, let's get a VS Code here. VS Code, come on, VS Code, VS. Now my menu popped up, Visual Studio Code. So here's my person objects, and there's where I fix the processing of my people, listing my people. Here was my error last time. I did for let O person in AP, that's supposed to be of AP. Remember what AP is? AP is a parameter sent to me, and I am expecting, and it's very good to put in comments here later on the updates, thank you. It's very good if you have a parameter, you take AP, you can do colon or dash, array of person objects. So I have my function with an explanation of what the parameters are. Here I create a list. Now let's go back to my people object and let's make it less boring. I have an age. Let's expect, how about a zip code? And let's take that as a parameter. Add that parameter as I add methods. Did your Mac crash?
It's basically been bricked all class time.
Oh man.
That sucks. Yep.
So zip code, let's go, I'm going to do shoe size. Shoe, not show, equals shoe Z, shoe S. I'll do shoe size. We don't like underscore, we'll do shoe size. Oops. Wrong key, shoe size. And what else? What interesting thing? We got zip code, shoe size. How about this dot phone equals phone? Makes it a little more interesting. Now, because I have this, I'm going to add those inputs to my user interface, and then I'll process that. Let's see, I do have comments at the top. I'll put in here code to demonstrate and manipulate objects. Yes, John.
So the class person is the same kind of use case as let OBJ person equal new person, so we can parameters afterwards?
Yes, yes.
Okay.
Yes, so since I have added more parameters, now I have 6 parameters, zip, shoe size, phone. In the new person, where I'm adding the person down in the process form, when I do new person right here, I'm going to comment out the old version and paste in a new person, adding the parameters. Now, just for fun here, you do not have to assign a variable here. You could just do this. Let me do skipping assigning a variable. I can do this. I can do age, comma, document dot get element by ID of the name shoe dot value. I'm allowed to send that as a parameter to that. I don't have to have a temporary variable. Same thing I can do for zip code. Document dot get element by ID zip dot value. And document. Oh, I see. What's his problem? Did I miss a comma? Document. Oops. Get element by ID of what was the other one? I forgot what our. Oh, phone. And let's see here, shoe dot. Oh, I see. I gotta get rid of the extra parentheses there. There we go. This, if you don't want to worry about having a temporary local variable, you can throw that right in the parameters to the new person constructor. And the reason, one of the reasons I'm doing this is, as you get used to doing this get element by ID all the time, you realize, maybe there's a way to do this that's cleaner, and I could just say I want to deal with that element named shoe, zip, and phone. There are libraries of code, and eventually I'm hoping to expose you to React, which saves you from having to type get element by ID 1,000 times when you're processing forms. Now let's make sure that this works before going further. Six parameters. Oh, I better have the HTML with the shoe, zip, and phone for input. So let's go to the index.html. And here's my inputs. And I like them on separate rows, so I'm going to copy paste a row here in my table. And again, if I have multiple rows and a list of what I want to have, I could do some loop here. And now shoe, zip, phone. Shoe ID equals shoe. Actually, type equals number. And shoe size. Zip code, what the person will see. Type equals number. Actually, I should make that text because we might have some Canadians. ID equals zip. And phone number. And I'm going to have that be a text because they might put dashes in there or parentheses. Now, I would like to get prepared to use CSS. let's just think about this. If I want to apply a style, say to that left column, and everything in that left column will have a style or an alignment, I like to align it right. I'm going to call that TD class equals, and let's call it, how about column 1? Getting the quotes, right number quotes. Let's call that C1 in my table. And we'll call this one C2 for column 2. C2. And this might be a special table. I might have multiple tables on my page. Let's go, instead of border equals 1, it's going to override my class. I do want border equals 1 for now, but I'm also going to say class equals, I'll call this my people table. People table. This is preparing to let CSS assign styles to it. I'm not doing anything but giving it a class for later assignment by CSS. I recommend that practice, so then you can separate out all the colors and styles of your TDs in your table. It'll be controlled by your class. Now you have to be consistent now, putting class equals C1, class equals C2 in all the elements of your table. So I'm going to remember to do that as I prepare. So it's not going to, shouldn't affect the looks at all until I start messing with CSS. So last name, age is going to be the column 1. Column 2 is going to be column 2. And now why is the color different? That's bothering me. Oh, there. And same thing here. Preparing for CSS, even though I'm not even using it yet. But once I'm ready for CSS, I know I have classes assigned to all those parts. I could wait till later to assign that, but I'm going to do it now just to get in my mind that CSS is going to be coming, and assigning a class to these elements doesn't affect the view of it until CSS has properties. But I'm preparing column 1 and a column 2. And that last column, processing a form, I could decide to center that, so I'm going to give it a class equals process. Or maybe I'll call it submit, because it's like the submit button on a form. Or you could call it enroll if you like. You just have to remember what you called it when you're dealing with your CSS. So saving that, and since I have my server right here, I'm going to go ahead and send my source code over to my server and make sure everything's saved. I think you can have it save on, you can have prettier code on save, but yeah, I guess there's a manual save. All right, it's going to bring up WinSCP, which wasn't running before. Connect now to my server. There's my AT Manning. It remembers my password, unsafe, but I trust this server. Log in. I think it remembers where I was last at. No, it doesn't. I have my, I don't have a link. I'm going to go ahead and make that link to my web page over there. I'll make a link. I'm going to call it cs460 sp24, and I'm going to point to var www html people.mas.edu cs460 AT Manning. And I don't need to make it a hard link. Click OK. And now when I click on that, there it takes me to it. And there's my homework 3. Let's see. Since I'm have this open, it won't let me rename this folder. I just accidentally renamed that HW2. So let's send my new versions over. At this point, if I'm working with a customer, I better make sure I have a backup of the existing one first. Multiple ways to do that, but I'm going to go replace everything, select both, drag them over. I can choose never ask or verify each time. Yes, there's a newer file. Yes, yes. And now refresh my page on the web page. Let's see what we got. Not bad. Didn't give me errors at the console. Now let's process. I suppose I could put some default settings in there. First name, Arthur. Last name, Manning. Age, 62. You know, better than age, we should have birthday in there. Size 11. Zip code 52002. And the phone, 581-568-9012. And enroll. I'm going to get rid of that pop-up. Enrolling. And there is my people. The people is doing nothing but listing the name. Let's make that more interesting now. But I'm going to pause first here and